So this agenda is basically the same as the last one. Anybody have any issues with the agenda? No amendments. Motion to approve.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
I'll second that.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Seha.
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone.
Aye.
Counselor Sini.
Aye.
Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That is a unanimous vote.
All right, so moving on, it is the first meeting of the year since last time we got canceled. So appointing the council president for this year. Do we have anybody who wants to nominate anybody? Do we want to just keep doing what we're doing?
I nominate Angie to continue as council president for the coming year.
I'll second that.
All right. Let's go ahead and vote by roll call again.
Counselor Seha.
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone.
Aye.
Counselor Sini.
Aye.
And Counselor Wick.
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
All right, and that is unanimous.
Colby, next time, can I have you unmute and ask Nico just so that we get it on the video as well? Because when you're muted, nobody hears you asking Nico.
Yes.
All right, so moving on, public comments. Do we have anybody who wishes to make public comment?
Mayor, I apologize for the technical difficulties we're having tonight. We tested out all the equipment earlier today and it worked fine. But something happened to the computers. We were starting up tonight and I think we had a little glitch there. So apologize for that. But we do have the presentation with Chris and he is online tonight.
Perfect. So Chris, you can go ahead while Ron's running back across the street.
Okay. Are you guys ready for me?
Yes.
So my name's Chris Brigado. I'm with West Tech Engineering. We're the city's engineer of record. We're working on several projects for the city, one of which is the wastewater facilities plan, which I'm here to talk to you folks about today. I understand that a draft of the document has been circulated. And so the content of that is what we're going to talk about. And you know, it's a tough deal for you folks. I think it's a thick document. There's a lot of stuff in there, a lot of technical stuff, and I'll do my best to explain the important parts. But it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but I'll do the best I can. And normally I'd like to kind of have a Q&A, but since this is a Zoom format, probably it'd be best to answer questions at the end. So with that, I'll get going. So why are we doing this work? Basically, the city has a facilities plan that was maybe 10 or 15 years old. They're typically updated every 10 to 15 years. So it's appropriate to do an update at this time. What we basically do is we look at the wastewater utility and try to figure out, you know, what are the existing problems with it and what problems are likely to arise in the next 20 years, and then come up with a list of recommended improvements. Okay, and then so that list is we refer to as a capital improvement plan. It has costs associated with those improvements, and then, you know, coming down to item 6, the city then can use that list to, you know, update SDC fees, look at user rates and that sort of thing. The other thing that the document does, it serves as a roadmap for development of the utility. And really what we're talking about there is how to serve or how to extend sanitary sewer service into areas of the city that are currently unserved. So that helps with development projects as they come in. The other thing we want to do is avoid haphazard improvements. We want to be good stewards of the public dollar. We want to avoid situations where we put in like an 8-inch sewer line to serve a development, and you come in 10 or 15 years later and figure out that that really should have been a 12-inch. It would have been more cost effective to install a 12-inch to begin with. So we want to avoid those types of mistakes. And then it needs to satisfy regulatory and funding agency requirements. And so we'll get to this in a minute, but DEQ is the primary regulatory agency. They have standards they want these planning documents to adhere to. And then the funding agencies also have standards they want to see as well. And the funding agencies are important because, as you'll see, that the numbers are big, and virtually every city like Aumsville needs some sort of funding assistance to help with these projects. So the document's prepared to satisfy those agencies. Some regulatory background, as I said before, the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality is the primary regulatory agency for municipal wastewater systems. They issue what's called the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit, an NPDES permit, that sets forth the criteria, the performance criteria that the city needs to maintain to properly operate their wastewater utility. As I said before, DEQ set standards for the content of the plan, and we try to achieve those standards. And then DEQ must review and approve the plan, okay? And we'll get to where that goes in the sequence here in a minute. Well, that's what this slide is. So this is kind of an overview of the process to show you where we've been and where we're going. Basically, we collect and analyze information on the existing system. We do some evaluation work, and then we produce kind of a 90% draft plan, and that's the plan that's circulating now. It goes through, some public engagement, presentations to the city council. That's today. Review by city staff, and then once we get comments back from the city, we revise the plan maybe more than once to address the city's comments. And once the city's happy with it, it then goes to DEQ for their review. They will have some comments that we need to deal with. If their comments are substantial, we'll then come back to the city council. Usually they're not, and we can then go ahead and finalize the document. And once DEQ is happy with it, they issue an approval letter, and then the document is ready for formal adoption by the city. So that's sort of the process, and we're up here in steps 3 and 4 at the present time. Some background on the planning effort. The study area is the area within the urban growth boundary. We cannot look outside the urban growth boundary. You have to look only at that area inside the urban growth boundary to conform with Oregon's land use goals. For the collection system, we assume that all of the land inside the urban growth boundary will be developed to current zoning and comp plan designations. We usually just look at the improvements we think are going to be needed over the next 20 years, not 50 years, not 10 years, but 20 years, and that's pretty standard for these things. We look at population projections prepared by Portland State University Population Research Center, and that number, just for your information, in 2045 is about 6,800 people. Finally, and one assumption we make that you should be aware of is we assume that there's no large water intensive industries, okay? And by that we mean, food processors, chip manufacturers, industries that would use a significant amount of water. You don't have any of these today. You probably don't have the water resources to provide water for a large water intensive user. And what we're talking about are big users that might use, 20 to 50% of the total water produced by the city. And so we just assume that in the future, the character of the industrial and commercial users will remain largely the same as it is today. So that's just something to be aware of. This slide provides kind of a cartoon overview of the existing system. Since we're engineers, we like to break things into their components. And so the wastewater system is broken into a collection system, which is these parts, and then the treatment system. So the collection system is used to get wastewater from the homes to the treatment plant. There's roughly 1,400 user connections, about 65,000 feet of gravity piping. And there's one pump station in the system that pumps the wastewater into the treatment plant. So this is worth noting. Aumsville only has one pump station, which is unusual. Most cities the size of Aumsville have more, and so fewer pump stations is a good thing. It simplifies the system and makes it more cost effective to operate. So it's a good deal that Aumsville only has one pump station. The wastewater enters the treatment plant. There's a headworks that screens out trash and that sort of debris. And then it flows into these first two lagoon cells, which have floating aerators. That's what these little white dots are, if you can happen to see them. After these cells, it goes into lagoon cell 3, then lagoon cell 4. And then the effluent from lagoon cell 4 is disinfected and pumped to a land application facility in the summer months. And in the winter months, it's disinfected and discharged to Beaver Creek, right about where that laser pointer is. That one other nuance here is there's 2 times in the year where the city cannot discharge any wastewater at all. And that happens in the spring and the fall when the the ground is too wet to receive irrigation and the flow in the stream is too low to receive effluent. So during those periods of times, all wastewater from the city is stored in the ponds. And so in preparation for those times, the operators lower the water levels in the lagoons, and then they fill up over that roughly a month-long period on each in the spring and the fall. So that's the existing system in a nutshell. Some history. The original system, which included the first 2 lagoon cells, was built in the 60s. That included most of the gravity piping that exists today, but quite a bit's been added since then in the collection system. In 1978, the lagoons 3 and 4 were built, along with some other upgrades to the treatment plant. I don't have it on the slide, but I think sometime in the 90s, the aerators were added to the first 2 lagoons. In 2007, there was a new pump station and headworks constructed that replaced some older facilities. This pump station headworks replaced the facilities that were built, I want to say in this 1978 project. And then in 2011, the irrigation system was used. We call it recycled water, but it's the irrigation system and the pivot that's out south of town. All of that was added in 2011. And so the system's largely operated as modified in 2011 with no major improvements since that time. This slide talks about some of the issues with the collection system that we recommend be addressed during the planning period. Some of the older portions of the gravity collection system is about 60 years old, meaning it'll be about 80 years old at the end of the planning period. So that's getting old. What we call I&I is a problem. So I&I stands for stormwater inflow and groundwater infiltration. Of those things, groundwater infiltration is probably the biggest problem. You can imagine when you put concrete pipes underground with manholes that cracks open up and groundwater seeps in. Groundwater has to be conveyed and treated just like it's wastewater. So it creates a financial burden to the community. Aumsville has an I&I problem that's similar to most cities in Western Oregon because we live in a wet area. So you're not alone, but it's a problem that needs to be dealt with, or it'll just continue to get worse. There are some areas of the gravity sewer system that are undersized, and the reality is they're undersized because of the groundwater infiltration. If you could magically make it go away, these sewers would not be undersized, but experience shows that getting rid of I&I is not very cost effective. The best thing you can kind of hope to do is control it. So with the I&I you have and some of the growth that's anticipated, some of the gravity sewers are undersized. And the final issue is kind of a statement of the obvious, that improvements are going to be needed to serve areas of the city that aren't already served. Okay, so that's kind of straightforward. So we go through the analysis in chapter 6, and these are the recommended improvements for the collection system. So this is all the system that gets the water to the treatment plant. Okay, so these first 5 projects are higher priority projects that are needed to upsize gravity sewers that are currently undersized. Okay, project G6 and project G7 are there to upsize gravity sewers that we think are going to become undersized during the planning period. Okay, these extension projects E1 through E4 are projects that are needed to serve areas of the city that are currently undeveloped. Okay, so the city won't build these. These will be built by developers, but this is the city will, when a developer of one of these areas comes to town, the city can use this document to kind of figure out how to serve that development. And then finally, we recommend kind of an annual sewer rehabilitation program funded at an annual rate of $30,000 per year. And really, this is geared at trying to contain and control that groundwater infiltration that we talked about. The city does this informally now. We just recommend formalizing it for the future. So that's it for the collection system. That's reasonably straightforward. We will now move on to the treatment plant, which has some more hair on it. So one of the reasons I haven't mentioned yet that we're doing this plan is that the treatment plant cannot consistently comply with the permit limits for effluent ammonia. Okay. Several years ago, DEQ added an ammonia limit to the city's permit. The treatment plant can sometimes meet the ammonia limit, but it cannot do it all the time. And so of all the issues at the treatment plant, that one is probably the biggest issue that the city faces, is this ammonia issue at the treatment plant. The lagoons lack some storage capacity. And again, that's related to those 2 shoulder season when all of the water needs to be stored in the lagoons. There's not quite enough room in the lagoons in order to do that. The lagoons lack organic treatment capacity to treat the organic loading that's predicted during the planning period. Since those lagoons were built, in the 60s and 70s, the sludge in the lagoons has never been removed. So you can imagine all the solids that go down the drain just eventually accumulate in those ponds, and it's accumulated to the point where it's becoming a problem and inhibiting how those ponds perform. So all of the alternatives for the treatment plant include removing the sludge from all 4 lagoon cells. The existing catwalks and piping and valves used to control the flow of water through the ponds. A lot of those items are old and are deteriorated and are reaching the end of their useful life. There's several mechanical items throughout the plant that require some overhauls, like the influent pumps and some control systems. And that's pretty normal wear and tear type stuff. The chlorine contact chamber is undersized. That's used for the disinfection system. And then the irrigation system's going to need to be expanded. There's not enough ground under irrigation at the present time to deal with the increased flows that are anticipated over the planning period. So these are sort of the list of problems that the city faces at the wastewater plant. And again, of these, the biggest one is the ammonia problem, okay? So in the plan, we developed 3 alternatives to deal with all of those problems, okay? Alternative 1 is what we call a sequencing batch reactor. So that's it's a modification of an activated sludge treatment plant, which is kind of the most common treatment system in the world. And that alternative, the total capital cost for that's about just under 22 million. Then the second alternative includes increasing the aeration in the lagoons and then adding on the tail end of the lagoons a fixed film process that specifically targets the ammonia. Okay, so the total capital cost for that is about 19 million. The final alternative is abandoning the city's treatment system, building a pump station and a pipeline, and pumping the wastewater to Salem, and paying the city of Salem to do your wastewater treatment and disposal for you. So that's basically what Turner does, the city of Turner. And so we looked at doing the same thing for Aumsville. The total capital cost for that's about 19 million. And again, these capital cost numbers include, if I go to the previous slide, if I can do that. Yeah, they include, addressing all of these issues, including removing the sludge from the lagoons and that sort of thing. So it's not just building the new treatment facilities, it's kind of dealing with the entire system comprehensively. So these are just the capital costs. The other component we need to look at is operation and maintenance costs. Okay, and so that's kind of what we do on this slide, and this is a table that's in the plan. So you can see there's the 3 alternatives we looked at across the top, and then there's the capital costs of each. For this analysis, we've assumed that the entire capital cost will be paid for by a low interest loan. The hope would be that as the city progresses through the process that some grants will be obtained to try to offset this loan amount. But for this calculation, we assumed it's all loan at an interest rate of 2.5% over a 25-year term. So this is the annual debt service payment for each of the alternatives. And then we just did some analysis to try to estimate the additional O&M costs for each of the alternatives. So the sequencing batch reactor we think is going to cost another $266,000 a year to operate above the current operations budget. Alternative 2 is about $190,000 additional cost to operate. And then alternative 3, there's a negative because you're getting out of the wastewater treatment business. So operation costs will go down there. The next row is the city of Salem charges. And these aren't relevant for the first 2 options, but you can see what this is. So this is based on the rates that Turner pays, and we worked with the city of Salem to figure out what they would charge Aumsville, which is basically the same, rate per gallon of wastewater that the city of Turner pays. And so this is that rate multiplied by the volume of water Aumsville would discharge. So the total additional annual costs, including debt service, additional O&M, city of Salem fees where applicable, is this number here. And then basically you just divide that by the number of connections, and then divide by 12 months in a year, and then add, this is the existing user rate, in round numbers, it's $50 a month, and you can see what the new user rate would be, okay? And again, these numbers are scary. The hope would be that the city gets some grant funds to try to reduce these numbers, but you can see that the pump to Salem option is by far the most expensive. Then sequencing batch reactors is less expensive, and the lowest cost option is alternative 2. Okay, so in addition to cost, there's some non-monetary things to think about, and that's what this next slide is about. So what I would say, I think, is if money was an issue, the best choice would probably be alternative 3, because it gets the city out of the wastewater treatment business. One of the reasons that wastewater treatment in Aumsville is a problem is because you don't have a good receiving stream to discharge into. You discharge into Beaver Creek, which is a small stream. As a result, you have an ammonia limit. There's lots of cities around that don't have ammonia limits. Like we're doing one of these right now for Independence. They do not have an ammonia limit because they discharge in the main stem of the Willamette. So the Willamette's a much bigger stream. It has much more assimilative capacity. The ammonia that they discharge doesn't adversely impact the Willamette River. So if you had a better receiving stream, you would find that the cost to provide wastewater treatment in your town would be lower. So, getting out of the wastewater business would be great. But the problem is it's just so darn expensive, right? So it's extremely expensive. One of the other drawbacks is now you're in business with the city of Salem, so they could always, change their rates, and you may or may not have much to say about that. This alternative also of the 3 probably has the highest potential for environmental issues like wetlands and that sort of thing, just because we've got to build a pipeline all the way into the city of Salem, and a lot of that will be in ground that hasn't been previously disturbed. So the way the document, the plan is written now, we basically are discarding alternative 3 based purely on cost. So that leaves alternatives 1 and 2. Alternative 1 provides a higher level of treatment than alternative 2. It just does. It's just a different type of plant that's going to provide a higher quality effluent. The other thing with alternative 2 or alternative 1 is it's easier to make changes to the process. And you have more control than you have with alternative 2. So if in the future there were some permit changes, you have a better shot at dealing with those with alternative 1 than alternative 2. And the disadvantage of alternative 1 is that it costs more than alternative 2. It is more challenging to operate than alternative 2. You don't get that better treatment for nothing. It costs more to operate. There's a little more to it, to the operations, than alternative 2. The operators have to pay attention to some more things, but these sequencing batch reactors are very common around, and there's lots of operators and a lot of resources around to help folks operate them. Staten has a sequencing batch reactor. Jefferson has one. There's probably 15 of them in the state, sort of thing. The main drawback of alternative 2 is that there's no installations like this in Oregon at the present time. We think eventually there will be, but there aren't any of these today. So it's sort of an unproven system. To tell you the truth, and it costs, and there's less control available than with alternative 1. This is a typo. That should say alternative 1. So the way the facilities plan's written now is the preferred alternative is alternative 1. Okay, and it's just based on these reasons here. That's more reasonable. It's more cost effective than alternative 3, provides a higher level of treatment than alternative 2. It's better suited to deal with future permit changes. It's more common, and it's not anything new in this area. So for all these reasons, alternative 1 is the selected alternative. But what I would say is these, even if the city moves forward with the document as written, where alternative 1 is listed as the preferred alternative, there's time to change. The next step in the process, once the facilities plan adopted, is figuring out how you're going to pay for this thing. And through that process, there may be reasons to change what you're doing and select one of the other alternatives. And so that could be done. Okay. You can do, write a quick amendment to change the facilities plan and choose one of the other options. This isn't necessarily set in stone, I think is the message I'm trying to send. Okay. So when you add the treatment plant job up to the collection system projects that we listed before, there's 12 capital improvement projects that total 28 million in the plan. Okay. And so the city can't afford to build all of those at one time, and really doesn't need to build all of those at one time. So the document includes a prioritization scheme. Okay. And so there's three levels of priority. Priority 1 projects are projects that will definitely be needed during the planning period. Priority 2 projects are projects that may be needed during the 20-year planning period. Most of those are growth driven. And then priority 3 projects are those development projects. So the projects that aren't needed, they're the projects needed to serve undeveloped areas. They'll probably all be built by developers. Okay. And so we further broke priority 1 projects into priority 1A and priority 1B. The priority 1A job is the treatment plant project. And this is the capital cost for alternative 1. And that's really just to get the city back into compliance with the NPDES permit. In fact, I haven't mentioned it yet, but the city has a compliance schedule in their permit that lists milestones and due dates for this facilities plan and a few other steps along the way to get the city back into compliance with the permit. And so that's really why this project is given this 1A priority ranking. And then the priority 1B projects are the 5 collection system projects that are recommended to address existing pipes that are undersized. 1.8 million there. Priority 2 projects are those 2 collection system projects that we think may be needed if growth occurs. That's about 600,000. And then the priority 3 projects are those 4 sewer extension projects worth about 4.3 million. So that's just an overview of the document. Now moving forward, the next steps are for the city council and the city staff to review the document, provide comments to West Tech. Some of that's been done already. And then we will go back and forth with the city to address those comments. And then again, once that process is done, it gets submitted to DEQ. We have to address whatever comments DEQ comes up with, and then it's ready for adoption by the city. And then once it's adopted, then the city can start looking at funding scenarios and that sort of thing. So that's the presentation. With that, we can open it up to some questions that you folks might have.
Chris, you don't know anyone who has like 21 million they're willing to give us to you?
No, unfortunately. I wish I did.
Anybody have any questions?
That was my only question.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, it's tough, and you're not alone. I mean, there's Creswell's looking at something similar, and yeah, it's tough. Hopefully, everybody's kind of optimistic that this infrastructure bill has some money that the city can take advantage of, but who knows?
Can I jump in for a second?
Go for it, Ron.
Sure.
So just a couple of things I want to let council know about. Staff is recommending, just based on those numbers, our recommendation is the SBR system. The other system that's just a little bit less money, there's a lot of things out in our future that I think that would end up costing us more money in the long run for for upgrades. So if we were going to go with a plant, I think our recommendation is SBR. I do like the city of Salem option other than the cost. And the reason why I like that is because out in our horizon, we do have this storage of water capacity because of our limited months where we can either irrigate on land or we can send water to Beaver Creek. The problem that we have is as the city grows, we're outsizing those two options that we have right now. So we're going to have to explore other options, which means probably more farmland to irrigate further away from the city. And as you know, anytime you run pipe, it's more expensive, right? Every time we lay this pipe. So it's kind of one of those things where, you know, there's not a great choice one way or the other. Some have some better benefits today, and some are going to have better benefits in the future. And maybe they're going to cost a little bit more today. And so as we think about this plan, I think we need to keep that in mind. But I do think what Chris said is right. We've left enough language. We've discussed these alternatives. We've put them as a project. Basically, we're scoping those projects to some extent inside the plan as alternative projects. We're just recommending at this point one direction over the other. Now, I will tell you that typically how it works is you go through this process and you approve the capital facilities plan, and then you use that capital facilities plan to leverage grants. Typically, it's difficult to get a grant without a capital facility plan approved. I am applying for those grants and have been applying for those grants with the assumption that we are building an SBR plant. And I do believe we're going to get some grants from those applications. So my concern here is I don't want to belabor the process because I'm constantly working on money. Chris has got to figure out how to spend the money under the limitations of time constraints with these grants. But my job right now is to just get money. And I think we're going to have a good chance of getting some significant grants. I don't want the technicality of us still being in kind of an undecided planning stage to weigh against us, which I believe it will if the grants are very competitive. So what I'd like to do, if council has questions tonight, is to try to get the answers to those questions. I would like to get this off to DEQ for their review. And if we have revisions, they can review those on their surface, but I'd like to get this moving in the system.
Anybody have any questions for Ron? I mean, Ron and I talk about this like every other day. And, I mean, we have been discussing grants quite a bit with, I mean, our federal representation, our state representation, basically anyone who listen. Like we're one step away from me just putting on a dress and going down Portland Road. So, you know, we're definitely working on this, but I mean, in all the conversations we've had, the SBR system seems to be the thing that I'm leaning towards. I don't know about the rest of you.
Yeah, I'm not in wastewater, but I've worked closely with wastewater guys, and I really think that's a great way to go. I think moving forward with that is the right answer as well.
I agree. I think it's a better option and it puts more control in the water treatment and not kind of making a decision and with pumping everything to Salem and then Salem bumping rates and then we can't get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some more maintenance and stuff and some costs involved later on down the future with the SBR, but at least it's a proven system versus the other one that is an idea, but nobody's doing it in the area. So we don't even know how effective it could be. And it's a lot of money to be rolling the dice on. And I think be more appropriate to consider the SBR that's a proven system and keep the control and ball in our court.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. I don't like the idea of, like, when we talk about bumping rates and things like that, that's the first thing that went through my mind when with Salem. If we can keep that control locally, I think it's gonna be better for us.
Angie, is that you got the music in the background?
That is, well, it's not my music, it's Josephine's music. That's all the way down the hall and in the bathroom, the privilege of having a teenager.
Wonderful.
Oh, Chris, I was just going to ask you and Matt, do we have any reservations about getting this plan? I mean, I know you typically bat this thing around in communities quite a little bit, but if we gave you the go-ahead, do you have any reservations about sending this in for review as is?
I don't. I think it's ready. I can't speak for Matt.
I think Steve and I and Chris have gone over this. I don't know what is this our third or fourth time really going through it. And,
Yeah.
and we've been working on it for probably over a year. So I mean, I think we've put the time into it. We're pretty confident with it. We do have I know that it can be extended, but we do have a deadline with DEQ. I think it's April 1st to have this in for their review, and I don't think we want to get too far behind on the compliance schedule. Again, it may make our argument not look so good down the road if we're not meeting milestones on that compliance schedule.
Well, Ron, do you want a motion or just a head nod, or how you want us to go about this for you?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if we need a motion because we're going to come back and actually approve it once DEQ does their revision. But I think if everybody could just vocally say if they support it, maybe one at a time or whatever, that would suffice. Chris, how do you normally do that? Do you get a motion to send this for review or?
We've seen cities do that or handle it less formally, you know.
Okay.
I mean, we I don't know if we need direction from the council. We usually get direction from staff. So you need direction from the council, maybe, you know. But
Well, we're moving. This is a big project for us. So I would like to just get everybody to thumbs up if they want to move it as is in the direction we discussed. Okay, good.
Cool. Yep. Go for it, Ron.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Move it forward.
All right. Consent agenda. Everybody get a chance to read through the minutes? Anybody have any issues? We have a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
We have a second.
Second.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger,
Aye.
and that's unanimous.
All right. So first thing first, we've got a public hearing on another developmental code update. So let's see. I have 8 p.m. exactly. We will go ahead and open up the hearing. Staff reports first. Give us the good word, Ron.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to go through each of the changes individually because I really need to do that on the record. I'll try to do that quickly. But just know that all of the changes outside of incorporating our brand new public works design standards and fire code are pretty much wordsmithing, where we just needed to do some Scrivener changes and or just slight verbiage changes so that folks would come in and be able to apply the code without more debate and just understanding it. So if you go to your changes and just go through the staff report, the first thing we did was changed up some definitions. And it was just slight wording change there because some of the definitions were actually misrepresented. There were some definitions that we had to make sure that we cleaned up as part of new changes in House Bill 2583, prohibiting occupancy limitations. We actually had that within our definitions in our code. And so we wanted to take that out so it was not inconsistent with that bill. In the junkyard wrecking yards, we just added garbage and miscellaneous metal parts. We've just had people try to use that a little bit in the code, and it's not intended to be. So we just added a few things there under definitions. Section 5, residential single family units and the ADUs. We just require the ownership of the ADU to be the same as the main home. For some reason in our code, it said it had to be the same person living in both units. And that was a misrepresentation of how we would apply the code, because obviously somebody's not going to live in both units. So we just need to make sure they own it. Otherwise it becomes, a multifamily situation. So that's section 5. Section 7, we just said facing any street, which is consistent throughout our code, but it just said front 3 feet. There are some corner lots, and obviously we still need to maintain a 3-foot setback on those corner lots. On 710, in the section about fences under our design standard, we just wanted to add other fences shall be permitted through site development review. And the reason why we use the word other is the code used to say wood fences shall be permitted through site development review, but there could be other types. Vinyl fences could be permitted. Site development review is just to make sure that the application isn't just replacing a design feature for somebody who wants to put in a fence. It has to be part of their design, and they may have other designs besides wood. So we just wanted to expand that. The ID zone, the main change we made there was we just added storage rooms and buildings except for as needed to support the approved use. And that's under the prohibitive section. We've had some folks come in and argue that a storage building is not a storage warehouse. It's parsing words, but we're trying to keep it clean.
Sorry about the compliment about your GT is going.
Angie, you yourself.
All right. And then we added development review required under 10.14. It's actually required in all of our sections under 21.03, I believe, site 1B development review, or I'm sorry, 12.03.1B. But we wanted to make sure that we added it here. Section 12, administrative procedures. Any person who submits a written request to receive a notice or provides comments during the application period, simply we removed a comma there so that anybody making a request would receive a copy of the notice of decision. Clarifying the zone change in relation to the lack of appropriate zoned property in the city. Again, I think it was just a wordsmithing area. I think what this previously said was any zone in the area. Well, as you know, we're zoned within the city, not in the area. So we don't want to open that up for a large argument. Under section 18, clarifying on-street parking is not intended to replace off-street requirements. We added this in the last code section to provide credit for those downtown businesses. we just wanted to make sure that it didn't say anywhere that this only applied to those commercial properties. So we wanted to make sure that was included. And then 20 and 21 are those supplemental changes related to the fire code. We just needed to make sure we added the criteria that it needed to comply with the Public Works design standards in the Oregon Fire Code. Nowhere in our code did it mention the Oregon Fire Code, even though we do apply that to development. We wanted to make sure that that was in here. That change was actually requested by our legal counsel. That's kind of what prompted this review. And then outside storage, I think we just wanted to wordsmith that. It's just got a couple of wordsmiths things in there. There's one section, and I might have glossed over it quick, but I want to make sure that you get that. It's actually, I must have missed that. It's under site development review 21. And that's clarifying the modifications must meet all the criteria instead of one of the criteria. So what this is this is an exemption for site development review. So if you had an existing business and it met all the codes, the current codes, and you changed the use or modified the use, there's an exemption under 21.03, and you have to meet the criteria under A, B, and C. And we've had folks arguing when they've had a different use that they only had to meet one of those criterias. We apply it that they have to meet all the criterias, but because the old language said or instead of and, we've had some folks make that argument. So if you approve this tonight, you're basically also signifying that that's how the city has operated and that's how it was intended to operate. And then under site development review 21.06. Here we go, 21.06. We added criteria to comply with the adopted public works design standards and fire code. So that was the other section that we added that in. So I know I went through that fast, but we do got a lot to cover, and I know council's had plenty of time to review this material. If there's any questions that you have on any of those changes or discussions, I'm happy to go over those with you.
Right. We don't have anyone in the room, so I'm assuming there's no general testimony other than what Ron said. Yeah, does anybody have any questions about anything Ron covered? I'm gonna take that as a no. So we will go ahead and close the public hearing. I have 8:09. Do we have any other deliberation that needs to take place?
I'll just make a couple quick comments. We did provide notice to DLCD as required under the state law. And I did coordinate with our representative on these changes, and I heard no comments back from them. We also took this December 2nd to the Planning Commission meeting, went through these changes, and the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for council to approve.
All right, so since it's a land use thing, before we vote or have a motion on this, does anybody have any conflict of interest, ex parte contact, or bias to declare? I'm gonna take that as a no. So do we have a motion on this? We've got to do the first reading and the second reading since it's a ordinance change.
I move to approve the first reading by title only of ordinance number 705, repealing and replacing ordinance number 703 as presented and adopting findings contained in the staff report.
Seconded.
All right, vote by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye. There we go.
And that is unanimous.
All right, since that was unanimous, we can go ahead and do that whole thing all over again as the second reading.
All right, I approve the second reading by title only and adoption of ordinance number 705, repealing and replacing ordinance number 703, adopting findings contained in the staff report.
I'll
Yes,
second it.
Roll by roll call.
Counselor Casares,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
And that is unanimous.
All right, moving on. We've got no old business, so new business, body cameras for our PD. You're muted, Ron.
One of these days, we'll all get used to this alternative working environment. All right, so just a little bit of background. The city of Aumsville Police Department does have some, they're somewhat outdated body cameras, and we do record video. We don't really use them as consistently as we'd like to use them. One of the reasons why we don't use them is because we can't maintain a good evidentiary chain of command with the current body cameras that we have and the software that correspond with those. And it's difficult for us to maintain CJIS compliance, which is the Criminal Information Justice System. And so one of the things we've been trying to do in upgrading our processes at the PD, in upgrading our technology at the PD, and some of our systems, including the server systems here at City Hall, is to check the boxes to make sure that we are CJIS compliance. The CJIS hasn't really been as I don't know, astute about auditing for those compliance issues, but they've already given notice that that's changing, and they're going to be much more strict and much more regular on their audits. So we need to get prepared for it. So giving you that background, one of the things that we are recommending is that we go with a new supplier for body cameras. They'll produce the equipment, and they'll also provide, as part of their service contract, monthly cloud storage that's secure and will meet all of our compliance needs. This does a couple of things for us. One, it doesn't use up loads and loads of server memory because it's all going to be cloud-based unless we pull it down for a case or a file or a hearing or something like that. The PD went out and got 3 informal bids. WatchGuard was a company that provided, I think, the best equipment and the best service based on those 3 estimates. And that is the company that the police department is recommending that we go with. Now we can add to or take away body cameras as we need to. We're looking at about $49 per month per camera. The PD feels like we need at least 7. We do have a few more officers with reserve officers than that, but we'd like to start off with 7, and that's $343 a month. We do have money within our IT service line item 011-650. We haven't been fully utilizing that particular budget, so there's plenty of money in there at this point to go ahead and move forward with this contract. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Sorry, I'm scrolling through this giant packet to find this stuff on the body cameras. On average, how many reserve officers do we have on duty at a given time? Is it more than one or two outside of our events?
No. And I think they may be able to. I think the PD said that what they were going to do is use some of the old cameras for the reserves, because the amount of time that they're on service right now is very limited. I think that was their plan. But if we feel like we have the need, and once we make this contract, we could add to it without coming back to council. So.
I mean, I'm just thinking it's not insanely, costly. Why don't we just get enough so that we have enough for them all to be used and ready to go? Like, why piecemeal it together if it's not super expensive?
Yeah. Well, it does add up, but yeah, if you approve the contract tonight with that direction, if we need another camera, or if there's a need, we'll just add to the contract, and it won't have to come back to council.
Yeah, I mean, based on the number of officers we have, the number of reserve officers we have, like, I'm fine with saying, like, let's get 10. Would anybody have an issue with that? Does anybody disagree with that?
No, I think our officers do. They volunteer as much, and we kind of depend on them. So we're a small community. I agree.
And this protects them. So yeah, I really like the idea.
Yeah. I would say, if we're going to approve the contract, I think you got the head nod for probably up to 10, Ron.
Excellent.
Do we have a motion?
I move to authorize the city to enter into a contract lease agreement with WatchGuard body cameras through Day Wireless with a revised 10 body cams for our officers.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Second that.
Everybody wants to second that one. All right, let's go ahead and vote by roll call.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
All right, Mayor. Well, I actually passed item A and I went to item B, but item A is the repairs to the sewer system screen. This is the screen that we used that
Text ready.
it's at the beginning of the treatment process, and it screens out the, large items that we don't want to go into the sewer system. And Matt's here, so I'm going to let him describe what we're doing out there a little bit. But the reason we're bringing this for you tonight, it's just under $50,000. Technically, I can approve that contract as an administrator, but we don't know if that cost will go above $50,000. So I've tentatively have approved it just to get part shipping. But we do want council to go ahead and get us a vote on this, and Matt can answer any questions you have.
Yeah, just a little background. The rain event that we had a couple weeks ago brought in a lot of rags and that sort of thing into the treatment plant. They wrapped around the influence screen and it broke. This is the second time in 5 years this happened. The first time we took it to a local welder and had him re-weld it, and that lasted 5 years, and I think we got our money's worth, but that repair was pretty expensive as well. And after it happened a second time, the manufacturer has a kind of a fix for it. Instead of one unit, it's 2 units that's bolted together at an access point that we can, if this happens again, we don't have to replace about $10,000 worth of parts. So it does save us. And in Chris's slide, that unit's was put in 2007. So it's getting up there in years. And so we've ordered the parts to repair it. City staff has taken it apart and gotten it all ready and ordered the parts. And then we will have the parts ordered, shipped, and then installed by the manufacturer, just to make sure, because it is a newer model, I guess. We wanted to make sure that they put it in and got all the tolerances and everything right so that it doesn't break again.
So, I mean, you're planning on it being under 50, you said, or at 50, Ron, and it may be more?
Yeah, what might put us over is the labor to install the new unit. And we've done a lot of the work, and we'll plan to pretty much get it ready to go. So all they have to do is install the new spiral assembly and gearbox, which should cut down on the time. But if they do run into an issue with, tolerances or something like that, it could bump us over that 50,000.
Okay.
About $1,600 a day.
It's a large repair for us. There's no question about it, but we have built this into our system, and we're prepared for a major breakdown like this. And that's the reason why we're able to do it. So.
Do you want a motion on this one, Ron, or is this another head nod one? With it being right at that 50, potentially more, does it really matter?
Well, I think the motion is if we could just approve the contract as presented, and then Matt, what's the name of the company?
It's Parks and Fine Screens are from Florida.
Yeah. So does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns, any of that stuff? I'm going to take that as a no. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve a contract with Parks and Screens out of Florida to make this necessary repair on city infrastructure as presented by staff.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Vote by roll call.
Counselor Caceres,
Aye.
Counselor Seha,
Aye.
Counselor Ecclestone,
Aye.
Counselor Sini,
Aye.
Counselor Wick,
Aye.
Mayor Clevenger.
Aye.
That is unanimous.
All right. So that's it for new business. Moving on. Your report, Ron. Oh, actually, I take it back. We've got State of the City right now, don't we?
Well, I'm going to go through my report just for a minute first, and then we'll talk about the state of the city. How's that sound?
Sure.
Police Department and Public Works reports are in your packet. I submitted a written report as part of this packet back in January. That'll go into the record. And if you have any questions about that or anything else, let's go ahead and take those before I move into the state of the city.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
All right, let's talk just a little bit about accomplishments this year. And we had a lot of accomplishments this year. For the sake of time, this will be available. We'll snip this out and put it on a video, and it'll also be available on the city website. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but I do want to just highlight a few that we've done. Our discharge permit was issued, and we were able to get the MOA with DEQ dissolved. That was that enforcement action that we were under with DEQ. Now, obviously, the discharge permit, we have to stay within compliance of that discharge permit under the schedule that they've outlined. But that was a big issue for us to work through and deal with this year, and we've done that. We had been working on cleaning up some of our water rights certificates, and as you know, you've approved a couple of contracts. We've talked about that a few times. I actually received those updated certificates, so now we can actually use our all of our water rights to beneficial use, which is fantastic. That was a big thing, and it's been out there a while. The construction of mods in the middle of a pandemic and supply chain shortages. I think I was putting pressure on Public Works the entire time, and they felt it, but they were out there and they did a great job on that. building, and we were able to do it in a very cost-effective manner. Even with the increases in material, we were able to stay within our budget range on that. We approved an emergency generator for the 1 million gallon reservoir. That's been a big priority one project for us. And we've awarded that contract. They haven't started construction yet, but they're getting ready to start construction. And then the delay in that is strictly going to be when we can get the generator itself built and shipped over. But all of that's going to happen that's going to be completed this year. But we've approved that and funded it. Purchased the reservoir property. We've had the property line adjustment completed, and we're just waiting for that file number to get back to escrow, and we'll be completing that. Got a new ballot box installed. Our community directional signs, as you've seen, that partnership with the school district. And we installed a sweeper pad to hold our sweeper debris, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So those are some big milestones. We received $50,000 in grants just for park projects. That's related to mods. And we did complete the transaction for ownership over the 3.6 acres to expand Porter Boone Park. And I actually have the deeds here filed at City Hall. So we did that. We built a dog park, installed a wheelchair swing. You wouldn't know it by tonight's council meeting, but we did upgrade the sound and video in the community center. And it's much easier to operate. We just struggled with it tonight, but we'll get that ironed out. See, we were able to have a corn festival this year, party in the park, our skate competition, a skateboard competition, our Easter reverse parade. We were able to maintain our Saturday market. All of these things that we did this year, I think there's a lot of accomplishments. I'm not going to go all through those because there's lots of them, and you'll get to hear about some of them in the individual goals. So our goal number one, provide and maintain municipal facilities and infrastructure to support our current operations and growth. We were able to separate our access points within City Hall to meet CJIS compliance. We did that. And our IT guys were in here doing a bunch of rewiring. We're actually going to put a new access point in the community center as well, so they're all consistent. That portion is still underway. We did install new wireless access points in the parks so that it would be available for the public this year. We're going to upgrade those. We wanted to get something in. We bought a low-cost system just so folks could use it last year. And we're going to upgrade those before the summer, mainly because of the fact that we want to be able to allow vendors, if we're going to have these large-scale events, and you got 60 to 100 vendors, we want to make sure that they can all access wireless in the park and be able to use that as part of operations. And I think it's just good for people that are park users to have that access. So as you heard tonight, we have a draft wastewater plan we've been working on all year. I think it's pretty good. I wish I had $24 million. I wish I won the lottery tomorrow. We'd just get that taken care of right now. But we're going to get some grants. I'm really confident. There's a lot of money out there. I think the issue is we're kind of playing this juggling game with the master plan, what direction we are actually going to go in, and what grants to apply for. And then a lot of the grants are related to the ARPA fund or act. And as of now, those grants have a very short window to expend funds. And so it's going to be a real challenge once we get those grants to actually be able to spend them in that time period, because we've got to engineer engineering is probably one of the lower costs of this project. So we're gonna really have to work hard if we access some of those large grants to get that money spent. I didn't mention it in the last slide because I skipped over it, but we remodeled the kitchen in the community center. That's been a project the council's wanted to do for a while, and we were able to do it this year. Purchased the water reservoir property. I've covered those, so I'm gonna skip on those ones there and talk more about those later. So there's just that kitchen remodel. You can see the conceptual design plans and then our final product there. Everything worked out as planned. And we have used it a number of times. We've rented the facility out a number of times. I think it's all working great. And when you go in there, it just really, for those of you that have been in the community center and the council chambers, the difference in there is really amazing. So one of the things we had a number of people, as COVID started to heat up, we had a number of people asking about 24-hour access to ballot boxes where they didn't have to come into a lobby. And we worked with our Marion County assessor to get this ballot box and get it installed. And our staff installed it. They provided the box, and it gets well used now. And folks don't have to come into the lobby. It's great for everybody, really. It was a great partnership because we don't have to leave City Hall open during that time period. They don't have to staff it with ballot box observers because, the box is secure and they can just come on their route and empty it. You see down to the right there, there's a picture of our dog park. We've got benches installed. We've got a few things we want to do with the ground maintenance out there in the dog park, but we did get it up and usable for the public. We also installed a big drinking fountain, which the picture doesn't do its justice in this little presentation there. Let me go back, but there's a drinking fountain for both people and the pets, and there's also an area there they can fill up a container. Or a water bottle, whatever they want. And then our wheelchair swing down there in the center bottom that we installed over at Wildwood. Support and encourage community involvement and create a sense of community and enhance livability. Well, we did that through the Corn Festival in the park this year. This was the first year the city took over full management of that event. I think we did pretty well considering it was, we were still in the middle of COVID. But I think we did good. We didn't have any COVID super spreaders that were reported from that. We had hand washing stations and plenty of safety protocols in place. I think we did pretty good. And we netted more than $18,000 to support local service organizations in the community, and council recalls awarding those donations to those different service groups here earlier this year. And it's great because for a lot of them, that actually is what will allow them to operate all year. Some of them have said that money will keep our clubs going all year. So that's great. Some clubs have gotten extra money, have done other things throughout the community, and actually created events of their own. And I'll talk about that a little bit. Party in the Park, it was a brand new event. I think the council, it was kind of conceptual from our corn festivals in the past and where we wanted to see it go and do something different. I've got the video. I think it was a great event. It actually made a little bit of money, and I think the community really enjoyed it. And we saw a lot of businesses and community members kind of come together at that event. So I thought that was fantastic. The skate competition, it actually worked out really well considering the fact that we kind of added that last minute, and it's already got my wheels turning on, how we can actually turn, maybe we turn our community into a destination for some of those types of events and create some additional layers there. We did our toy drive, Santa pictures, Santa visits throughout the community. We did have small changes to try to keep folks safe. Our holiday light and decoration contest, that's been doing extremely well. I can't remember how many participants we had this year, but it was quite a few. And I think the recipients of that recognition really deserved it and enjoyed it. Letters from Santa, we take those in at City Hall, and Santa replies to all the kids in the community. We did that free hot dog lunch drive-through for folks this year as part of the Christmas store. The Christmas store was an event that the Exchange Club put together with some of the proceeds that they earned from Saturday Market and the Corn Festival. And it was a great little event. I think we had about 66 participants at that event, and the kids could come in and pick out a gift for their mom and their dad, and get it gift wrapped and then take it home and put it under the tree for them. And really, if you didn't get down for the Christmas store, if they do it next year, I encourage you to come and volunteer, because when you see the excitement on their faces, and they're proud to be able to get a gift for their parents, it's kind of what it's all about. And it was a great event, good time. Easter parade and our national night out. So those are all of our event updates and outreach. Now, we also did, we've been keeping the council updated. The council gets emails from me, keeping them updated of ongoing situations all the time. But we also keep the community informed through our website, our social media presence. A lot of those times when we get questions, we will try to answer them if they're a simple logistics question. If they go into layers, then what we do is we try to just make a personal contact with that person from social media and get them the information they need. Continuing to do our newsletter and our utility billing, that's been a positive, and I think it's cost a little bit of money in the long run, but it sure has freed up just equipment and time operations at City Hall. And then videoing our meetings and getting those on YouTube, we're continuing to do that. I think it's been pretty successful outside of today, but we'll put a nice video together, and we'll get some of those technical things fixed there. Talk a little bit about partnerships. That was one of the things the council really wanted to explore. We did, I do coordinate a monthly meeting with this Cascade School District, and I talked to their communications director every month. And we also have I think it's the assistant principal at the high school, who is also like the vocational and special projects coordinator. And so we meet every month just at a staff level and talk about things that are going on and look for opportunities. One of those partnerships that we were able to develop was the community directional signs that you see installed. That was a great project for the kids. I worked with the shop teacher, and Steve put the design together. The kids did a great job. Now, it took a little longer as we anticipated, just because we had summer recess and the projects weren't completely done, and then we had to go back after summer recess for the new school session. And then with COVID outages that were going on, it really drug out, but we got it done. And the only thing that's not up right now that I believe there's some single pole signs for just some of the small parks and different directions, like one to take you to direct people down Mill Creek to Aumsville Ponds, and there's one that'll take you over and direct you to our Heiberger Park, and then one to Wildwood Park. So we haven't got those in yet. I think they're being painted right now, and then we'll get those single poles installed, but that was a great partnership project. Moving the Saturday market to Porter Boone, we started to brand for mods as that construction was happening. And then had assistant and support from the Exchange Club to be able to staff that every Saturday. Before we were doing Saturday market once a month through the summer, so we would have 4 Saturday markets, but doing it every Saturday throughout the summer, we had 11. And that was a lot for us to staff internally because then those folks have to flex, they have to take a day off during the week during that summertime. And it's hard sometimes to be without an extra person. So we got help from the Exchange Club and they staffed it throughout the summer. And I think that was a great partnership. And I think they did a really good job with the vendors. And we'll continue to work on that. Colleen and I would like to concentrate more on getting more higher end use vendors in, like food vendors and maybe a bakery or a fresh farm produce vendor in there. And so if we can continue to get help supporting the staffing of that every Saturday with the Exchange Club, we'll divert some of our extra time to that. And then we did work with the assessor's office to get that ballot box put in. I think I put on here, I'm not going to go through all of that, but we just had Girl Scouts, the SIT, the VFW, Boy Scouts, the Exchange Club. We had Sanium Hospital. We had all kinds of people and just community members come out and work for the Corn Festival. And I think we leveraged well over 1,000 volunteer hours this year by various groups. 230 of those hours were strictly documented at the Corn Festival. And that was just community member volunteers that came in. So we did really good. And then we've been coordinating with Cascade School District to form and support youth involvement in a lot of these projects. And we actually had a bunch of youth signed up through them for Christmas in the park, and then we had to cancel that, and so that was kind of a bummer. But that we've got a channel to get youth involved, and I think we're just kind of working through the COVID exposures and closures and reopeners and all that other good stuff. And I think once we get through that, we've got a good network and system put in place right now. And so I'm not going to go through all of that. We did approve the 2040 vision plan last year and get it on our website as the flip book. That was a big thing. We have really increased our social media presence, and we've actually got plans to step that up even more. But with the mayor's help on scheduling a lot of our announcements and then making sure that we could address things as they occur on the fly, I think we've been doing pretty good. All right, there's our Santa visits throughout the community, and that was just a miserable day. As you guys know, that was also our Christmas in the Park day. Santa got out, and we actually gave away, I think we gave away more treat bags this year than we did last year. Even though that weather was so nasty, people still came out. We had some safety concerns at the park with the tents and the flooding, and that was the reason why we ended up canceling the evening events out there. But during the day, people were out there. You could see our little drive-through hot dog stand. We gave away a couple hundred hot dogs that afternoon. Oh, people were fed. We had chili dogs too, Mayor, so we got you. And then down in the bottom there, you see the Christmas store. That was the kids coming in, getting their presents wrapped after they picked them out in the little shopping center. And we even did, with our toy drive, we do a Santa photos in the community center. So we had a Santa that came in and we did photos when kids came in to pick up their toys that day. So we didn't get it at the park, but we diverted and did it there. And then that was our reverse Easter parade, and the community really enjoyed that. It took a little longer and a little more staffing than I think our normal Easter event, but I don't know, the community really liked it. There's our party in the park. That was one picture. That was not when we were at capacity, but we were over capacity. There were really no places to sit or tables available. And it was a great event, you know. I think everybody did a great job there. Everybody was responsible. I don't think we had any community incidents to worry about. We had a couple little arguments in the parking area, but they were resolved quickly and they were minor. And people enjoyed it. Some people came in costumes. You can see that down on the lower right, and really enjoyed it. Those are just some of our other events. And then I just wanted to show you, this was just the corn sales pile that you see there. That's 10 ton of corn, and we had 10 ton for cooking that was dumped or unloaded down by the cooking facility. So this was just unloaded the day before. We pre-bagged. I think we sold 16 or 1,800 bags, or maybe it was 2,000 bags of corn. It was a lot. I think we pre-bagged 1,600, but we ended up selling closer to 2,000 bags of corn. And again, our supplier, I hope he's willing to do it again this year, because he hasn't let us down yet. It's been very good corn. All right, so this is one of our goals. Goal 3, create an environment to attract, retain, and grow businesses. I really think our code changes and our vision plan is really having that effect. Last year, I showed a number of slides where we showed the before and after of about 6 or 8 downtown businesses. We've had a number of those businesses, the pizza peddlers, remodeled. They're still in the process of remodeling. And we have applications in and pending, on a couple of businesses that then will go through a remodel process to meet our downtown design standards. And when they do that, we're going to see just a huge impact in that downtown district. You know, when you look at that investment that people have made, now we get a lot more inquiries for investment in the community, where, you know, we might have somebody wanting to come in and do some sort of investment opportunity once a month or once every couple of months. We're dealing with sometimes 3 or 4 people a week, but definitely consistent stream of people that are inquiring about businesses or property or things that they could do in the community. So when you take those business improvements and you look at the landscaping improvements downtown, and you add all that up, people see that and they look at it as a place that they want to invest dollars. So I think we've done that. We've been a good resource, I think, for our businesses throughout the year, trying to communicate resources for them to access to help with their business needs in the midst of COVID. But not just in the midst of that, but you know, small business administration programs, things like that, that they can take advantage of. And anytime we see something that we think our businesses can utilize, we have a list of those businesses that are typically engaging for those types of programs, and we'll call them and just give them a heads up. I think keeping our development ordinance updated and streamlined and clear and understandable is really important. And I've had a number of developers that are accustomed to developing in cities that have some sort of structure, and they really appreciate it. They can see what we're trying to get done there, and it makes it easier for them to navigate when they come in with an application. Again, we approved the vision plan. I think that was big. We continue to work with all the properties along Main Street to help them navigate the improvements that they need. And we've had 2 or 3 new businesses open this year on Main Street. And next year, we're going to see at least that many So I think that's great. Mods phase 1, we've completed that. I told you we were able to fit that within budget constraints. I think when I saw the in budget numbers, we were about $4,000 over what we had budgeted for mods. We originally budgeted $50,000. We had a $10,000 contingency from what we thought we needed, and the price of lumber went up like, I don't know, 250%. So I think we did pretty good getting it that close to the budget. And we had extra money in the line item. We just kind of, we had saved money on landscaping and the downtown landscaping project. So we had money in the budget. We just went a little over on that one, what we kind of intended to spend on that project, but it was within budget constraints. And then we continue to meet with our state and federal representatives, the mayor and I think Angie, and maybe even a few others were passing those emails on constantly. There was a flurry of them this week, and I've got plenty of work to do to try to take advantage of some of their programs, and I'm working on that as we speak. There's mods. As you can see, our before and after picture. Now we still got to do the electrical and landscaping. We were able to get those grants to be able to do that this year. So we've got our electrical project out to bid. But I'm proud of this space here, and I can visualize the activity in that space and what that will mean to the growth of our Saturday market. So I'm pretty excited about it. If you look at the lower right, that was kind of our conceptual idea and conceptual plan. And if you look at the left, you can see we pretty much nailed it on the mark right there. And again, in the middle of a storm disaster, a wildfire disaster, logistic and supply shortage, and a pandemic, the fact that we're able to do any projects at all is amazing, but the fact that we're able to do as much as we've been able to do is pretty awesome. And then if you look at the lower center screen, you can see we lit it up with Christmas for our Christmas in the Park event. Now next year we'll have heat and electricity and lights in the building, and we'll be able to utilize that as part of our event growth out there. So that'll be great. Goal 4, ensure a safe and prepared environment for citizens. Again, the February ice storm that, come up and bit us in the middle of everything else. We had to pivot our resources to address the damage. You can see the damage just in this background picture. That was Michael Way. And it was almost impassable, even to some residents down there. And a lot of the residents that live down there hired contractors, and they got folks out there and we're cleaning those trees up. The city helped out where we could. We had 153 trees lost throughout city parks. We had to repair some damage to one of our wells where I think a tree came down and took out a power line, and I think we had to get a new power panel installed in there and some other stuff. But the mayor and council and public works staff stood up an emergency warming shelter. Some area businesses helped us provide food. This is a community coming together. And when you talk about things like engaging your community, goal number 2, and ensure a safe and prepared environment for citizens, you do those things as a team. You do it because the community comes together when they're needed and they're called on. And we had that during the storm. We had independent businesses that had no, they had no reason to go out. Were out helping us get the streets open. I know Visor, some of the utility companies were out cutting trees out of the way because they had the equipment, and they were helping to do that. And then it also gave us a chance to think about what are some things. These are good test cases because even as bad as it was and much of an inconvenience, as it wasn't a catastrophe to the scale of we were worried about having mass casualties or loss of life. So it was a good exercise, and we were able to take advantage of that. The council and the mayor did some emergency debriefing while they were sitting there for hours and hours at the warming shelter. We took pictures and notes of all of that. We're incorporating some of those concepts into our emergency planning work. So it was a great, no effort lost there. We purchased universal charging bays after this disaster, because one of the things that we quickly realized was a lot of people just really needed to be able to charge their communication devices, their computers and their phones and things like that. So we've got that stuff. We've got some extra emergency supplies, and we're going to look at getting some more of that this year. And then the city is working with FEMA to get a 75% cost recovery. I actually closed out that FEMA project with FEMA today. I signed off on the last federal forms through the federal portal, and we put in invoices for that. We should see somewhere between 65 and I think close to $80,000 in reimbursement at the end of the day, but I think it's closer to 65. And that will cover the city's cost related to the damage, the cleanup, and most of the staffing costs. So we'll get reimbursed for that. Now, I will tell you that it's been a year, and we're just now, it's a lot to go through a FEMA reimbursement process. It is a tremendous amount of work and administrative duties. And, it's almost cost prohibitive for, when you start talking about these small numbers, but it was good exercise for us to go through, because when we have a larger scale disaster, we kind of are exposed to the system. And so we look at everything as an opportunity. So even though it was something we had to do, it was a good training exercise as well. Talk about our police department under goal 4. Our police department responded. They were dispatched to 4,017 calls for service last year. And that was in the midst of COVID. 1,637 of those resulted in an actual report being written. Now the reports will be for a variety of things. Some of those are not necessarily criminal referrals. It could be some other type of report, but that's quite a few, 1,637 reports. 131 of those were COVID related calls. And that was assisting somebody that had COVID or was in need of COVID, some sort of COVID response. And we actually physically had somebody show up. I believe the police department early on in COVID response were helping people like on our vulnerable citizens list, or people that had COVID. They would go and get their, help them get their medication delivered, or groceries or food if they needed it and didn't have anybody else. So they really did spend quite a bit. And not that I like to highlight it, but we did have a number of COVID related deaths in the community. And because of our jurisdiction, our location being out in the rural county, our police department ends up going in and doing those the investigation, the death investigation in those cases. So some of those were COVID. Our folks had to go in and try to maintain a safe environment and still facilitate that investigation and the services that needed to be provided for those folks. So yeah, it was great. It was great that we had those folks, and they were very dedicated during this time. We provided sandbags during flooding. We've been coordinating with Marion County Emergency Management. We've been coordinating with Marion County Health Authority and the Oregon Health Authority. adjusting our COVID response to support the community and businesses as it's unfolding. And as you know, it's constantly changing. Working with our state contractors to put together an updated hazard mitigation plan, and that's so we can access some of these FEMA funds to do hazard mitigation projects. And so we're working with that right now. There was a FEMA announced a round of hazard mitigation grants today, as a matter of fact. So we're positioning ourselves again to do those things that we need to do and leverage outside dollars as we can do that. We've been providing and updating as the updates occur on our COVID page to our website. Again, the warming shelter, our health education and response, and we installed a new sweeper pad. This was I think it was in our planning process from last year. We talked about that, where when our sweeper goes out and sweeps the streets, it picks up heavy metal contaminants, and we just can't put those back into the environment. So we need to have a contained area where we can dump those, and storm water or water that comes off of that will go into a treatment facility and not into our streams. And there's just some more pictures of the park. This actually was before we got the last round of flooding, which the picnic tables and those benches, I think, were underwater. The water certainly rose higher than that in our last round. But it kind of looked like that when it was pretty close to that one. We had Christmas in the park going. It was up there. So our new dog park, we built a city float for our grand marshals. I thought it was a nice float. I didn't get to see it because I was down cooking corn all day, but I saw a video and pictures. It looked good. Got our wheelchair ramp installed. You know, these were things that we were being responsive to, things that the community brought forward. I mean, the wheelchair ramp was a Facebook chain that started and said, hey, this would be cool to have. And you know, we know we've got residents that can utilize a facility like that, and we haven't really installed a lot of new equipment. So this was something we went out and purchased and got it installed. So hopefully this summer we'll see more use. They'll get a chance to use that more. We've seen our downtown improvements. There's a picture of that, what that sweeper pad looks like. You know, it's a pretty large facility there. And then again, keeping our communication open to the community. But I think these are all good stewardship projects because number one, a lot of these we were able to do in-house. We didn't sub these out. A lot of them were partnerships, and they were little low-cost projects that provide a big return to the community as far as accessing facilities and or services. And like the dog park and the swing, again, these were things that we were hearing from our community members that they would really wanted to see, and we were able to bring that forward for them. All right, I always like to show this slide year after year. We did get our financial audits completed before the end of the year. Everything looks great. As a matter of fact, we're looking as good as ever in our budget. If you look at this report, I don't know, can you see my cursor? Probably not on the slide presentation. No.
Yeah, we can.
Oh, you can. Okay. So if you look, these lines here are basically, these are all of our capital assets and our cash. And then you weigh those against your liabilities. And then you get this kind of bottom line here. And you can see this was last year, we were at about $12 million, just over. And this year in our financial reports, we were in just a little over $13 million. Now, you get in and out. But if you look at your cash equivalents up there, 4.9 million, and you look over here, 5.6 million. So we're growing, we're building those funds that we need to build to do those major capital projects like the $22 million sewer treatment facility. We'll, you know, some of that will get paid for out of some of those restricted funds that we have, and even unrestricted funds that we have, because we've got money in our sewer capital that'll pay for some of those things. And then if you look down here, our total budget last year was 4.4 million. This year it was actually less, 4 million, but we grew in revenue. And some of that, as a lot of this was related to growth, you know, new housing starts and permits and things of that nature. A lot of that is pass-through money. 19% of that last year's services were paid from property tax. And this is a message I think sometimes gets lost in the community, and that is, you know, we don't operate the city strictly on property tax. We just could not provide the services that people want and need in a rural community like this. It helps. It's a good chunk, but we have to have other business type operations. Some of that is our utilities, our enterprise funds. A lot of it is just things like we lease out city property for cell tower use and different things like that. We get a franchise fee that comes in from utility companies. So it's just a lot of the business operation. And if you look this year, 22% was from property taxes, but considering the budget went down, it's about the same. It's, you know, it's actually running about the same. So the city finances are looking good. Our bottom line is looking good. Our debt is coming down a little bit. One of the things I do want to point out, the only long-term debt that we have right now in the city is associated with the last sewer upgrade. And so we still have about $1.7 million in sewer debt from upgrades that we're getting ready to replace. And when we go out and we get that sewer loan, if we do in fact get a sewer loan, and that's the way we go, it'll be a, you know, 30 or 40-year loan, and that loan will exceed the life expectancy of that facility, and that's the only way we can keep those rates down. So it's one of those things where you really want to look at the short term, but you also want to look at the long term, because again, we've still got this outstanding debt. We'll have to pay for that in addition to upgrades that we're going to do too. So it's a balancing act. We did pay off our water debt a few years ago, and we no longer have any water debt, but we do have some big water capital projects coming up. But I think we're just in a really, really good position compared to previous years. When we get to a couple of these closeout slides, you'll see what I'm talking about. And then over here, I just wanted to, I'm going to move this over so I can see it. This was the report that I've been putting these together every year. And you could see from this report, remember the last one? This was a little over $5 million. This was the report from the year I became the administrator here. Our total cash was about $1.8 million. And if you look at that bottom line, we were at 13 million. With all of our assets and all of our operations, we were about at 8. Now, that doesn't necessarily, that means what we've done is we've taken advantage of development. We've had growth pay for growth. We've revamped our fee schedules so that they align with the services. We've aligned our policies so that people who use the system pay when they use the system in addition to normal use, things like that. And I think it's actually a better system, and it's keeping us or getting us to a point to where we can actually tackle some of these projects. Now, back then, our budget was only 2.8 million, 24% of that was from property tax at the time. And you can see now our budget is $4 million, and it's actually less of that is coming from property tax. So I think if you just look at this balance sheet, the budget documents and our financial statements are fairly thick. You guys get a copy of them every year. And they show lots of ins and outs and lots of operations, but I like to use this financial analysis page just to kind of give a high level look at where we are. And we're doing really well. We still have these potable water issues, so I left this slide up here, but we're doing really well on aligning all of the things that we need to do to be able to overcome some of these challenges. So we did get, our tower well re-drilled. We got our water rights certificates reissued so that we can actually use them at the source of withdrawal. We're getting everything. We've gotten grants and stuff for a new million-gallon reservoir. So we're checking the boxes and we're getting that done. Our wastewater treatment facility, as you heard tonight, I kind of threw some numbers, 18 to 23 million. We're going to be closer to the 23 million. We're going to have an escalating O&M for the treatment. And I do want to just say, I meant to say it tonight, but with audio difficulties, I didn't chime in. I do want to say, when we're looking at these sewer facility analysis, remember these things they're very high level and not very detailed. So I would tell council, when you're looking at long-term O&M, plan on that long-term O&M being more than what the sewer facility plan indicates. I've yet to see O&M come in under what those facility plans say. There's always those things out there that occur, that happen, that are expenses that are unforeseen in that facility plan. And I think, just keeping the lights on and stuff, that's probably all accurate, but there's going to be things that will occur in the O&M of that facility that will be higher than what we're anticipating, I'm sure. The big issue or concern for me is the seasonal discharge to Beaver Creek and what that means to the city as we grow. And honestly, that sits out there. I just want to tell council that's out there, and as we grow, that's going to be it's going to be a concern that we're going to have to address at some point. And then increased requirements from DEQ. I've never seen regulations go backwards. They always seem to be more stringent as time goes on. And one of the things I've talked about with staff and with our engineers is look at, what, as part of this facility plan, what would it cost to upgrade the facility to do like a Class A reclaimed water? What are the advantages and disadvantages of that? And if we don't do a Class A, we're not talking about doing a Class A as part of this plan, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't amend into that at some point as more information becomes available. But if we don't do one, are we planning so that it could be retrofitted in there as part of the plan? So those are things that we're looking at. We're having those conversations because our needs are going to grow, and our ability to discharge that water is going to get more and more difficult to find sources to be able to do that from. So those are some challenges. Talk a little bit about good things. Now, I talked a lot about the projects that we did and the programs that we approved at the beginning, and you saw that. I mean, really, when you think about it, and I compare this to previous years, we were, a big project for us was trying to get $12,000 to change the servers at City Hall a few years ago, and look where we are. We're doing all these Main Street projects, and we're doing these tourism related and economic development related projects, and we're designing intersections. I mean, we're just going gangbusters. And typically what I would say is we'll throw a few grants up there, but this year we were able to get a $6,000 grant from Pacific Power, Marion County Prosperity Grant, 15,000, a DQ grant that actually was, a DLCD grant. That was a mistype there. $20,000 to do our UGB and our buildable land analysis project. Now we were going to have to pay for that out of general funds, but there was a bill that approved some grant money this year, and we were able to access that and utilize it and pivot. So we didn't use those general fund money. We were able to get that T-Mobile hometown grant for $22,400. All of those grants outside of the BLI and the UGB grant is what will finish off phase 2 of mods. We were able to get an ARP direct distribution from Representative Moore Green of $300,000. I was actually corresponding with her today, and I think we got the paperwork figured out on that finally. She's going to get that to us. We had a direct distribution of $987,000. That's from ARPA. That's in our sewer fund, ready to. We use that in our grant match applications, as well as money in our sewer improvement fund to try to leverage additional grants. So we're using that money as grant match. And then we did get that ARPA money that came out of the state Senate capital budget of $2.5 million to go towards our new 1-million-gallon reservoir and our new well project. So you'll look at that's pretty impressive. So our grand total in grants this year is $3,850,000. And would I have thought a year ago that we were going to get that kind of money? No. Now we compare that to 2016, we got a $12,000 grant, and that wasn't a bad grant for us at the time. It was actually a pretty good grant considering where we are. There wasn't a lot of ARP money available, and grants were very competitive. Compared to 2020, we got 147,000. That was a good year for us, big year. The year before that, I think we got about 130,000. I think it was 19. We got a ORPD grant for a pretty good chunk. So, $100, $200, $300,000 grants would be normal. $3.8 million is a good year, any way that you slice it up. Now, I don't want to jinx it, and I don't want to seem overconfident, but I'm feeling really good that we are going to put that number to shame. We're working hard, so we're gonna try to access some money to really get a jump start on some of these projects that we need to do. Now, one of the things I do like to say, COVID and the American Recoveries Act and the infrastructure bill that's out there, there's a lot of grants available right now for that. We're just now getting into the beginning of those grant cycles and what's required, what's available. This is I would say a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I wrote here in my little screen, grants are not a reliable answer to solve problems. A lot of cities defer projects because what they say is, well, we don't want to have to pay for it with the community funds or loans or debt. Just go out and get free money, and they defer those projects until money can be made available. It just does not happen. We are aligned somehow with the stars, where all of these projects are kind of on the cusp of this unusual access to money. And so we're trying to take full advantage of that. I'm taking lots of liberties in my applications to make sure that they look and meet the requirements of the grants. And we're gonna go hard fast to spend that money. But we're doing everything we can, folks, and we're having some good successes. So I just want to talk about some accomplishments since 2018. I'm not going to go through these, but I wanted to show you this because it is really impressive. Our community has went a long way, and you read through this list, and there's things like organizational structure, restructure, and policies and things like that. But there's big milestone projects in here. Michael Way, rebuilding Michael Way, acquiring a 23-acre parcel of land on the east side of the city, the Safe Routes for School project, getting our vision plan updated. There was new bathrooms in Wildwood Park, the expansion to Porter Boone Park. I mean, there's some big projects in here, big milestone projects. I'm not going to go through all of them because it would just take too long. And these do not even represent what I showed you at the beginning of the slide. And these do not represent just kind of all those daily things that we've done. But the community really is working well together, and the policy board is working well together and working well with us and providing good policy and good direction and plans. And having those plans is really what makes the difference. But when I think about all the new events that we've created for this community, and the response from the community about that, I mean, just the response from the community for that little project that we partnered with the Cascade Shop School, the little directional signs. The last time I looked at that, we had, I don't know how many hits was on it. It was 300 or 400 local hits and quite a few shares. For a small community like ours, that's pretty positive stuff. Restructuring our finances so that we could deal with things like a $50,000 part breakdown in the sewer operations. 4 or 5 years ago, it would have been, we would have struggled with that. Dealing with all of the natural disasters, and being able to fund that until we can get recovery dollars back. Those are great things. But there's major milestone projects here, both locally and regionally. And I think our community deserves to know about them. And I think our elected officials really should take a pat on the back, because it's with your guidance and support that all of these things occurred. Just talk a little bit about our planning retreat from last year. Last year we got together, we talked about our water capital facilities plan, and we prioritized the emergency generator as our #1 project. That project is funded and awarded and getting ready to start construction. So, that's how quickly these things happen when we're all on the same page and we're all working towards the same goal. And that's for that 1 million gallon reservoir that's existing. Now that'll also fund both of our reservoirs. So it'll generate both of our reservoirs. The water right work that we needed to do, now that's in 2 stages. One stage was to get all of our old certificates cleaned up so that we can use to their full beneficial use. And we've done that. And to do that within this time period is pretty amazing, but we've gotten that done. Now there's some additional water rights work into trying to identify and acquire additional water rights for future growth. We've got some water right capacity right now, but we know we're going to need more. So we're still working on those issues, and that'll be a work in progress. And dealing with our ongoing maintenance issues, we're accomplished that this year. We're doing that. Our new well project, council and I have talked about that, and our new reservoir project. We've got 2/3 of the funding for that project this year. We've got a contract with our city engineer to do the design of that and facilitate that. And so, it'll be a couple of year project because you got to go through the permitting stages of a new well. But just from last year to this year, when you just think of, if you just took that one bullet of water capital, that's that's pretty significant and it's pretty amazing. And I just don't want it to be passed over lightly, the significance of it's pretty amazing. Sewer facility plan, the last one we had was 1999. That's ready to go. Council looked at that. It's going to go to DEQ now for approval. So again, we've done that this year. Our capital facilities plan, we looked at the I&I, approved our public works design standards. We did that. And then got our sweeper pad installed. All these things we talked about last year, council gave us direction for, we worked it into the budget, and you know, these things are being completed. The Delmar 11th extension and the Delmar 1st, that we have a project that was awarded this last year, and those two intersections are now under design. They're being designed by our engineers. Our new public works building, that's something that we're working on. We're actually going to come to council. It'll probably be at the next meeting for that. And we're going to ask council to award an engineering contract to our city engineer to design that building. Now, we were trying to get that building built as low cost as we possibly could and still meet the needs of what we were looking for. We've kind of pivoted that now with the infrastructure issues that are going on, contractor availability, and the cost of material. I think where staff has landed is we just go out, we do a regular building design, we put that thing out to bid. It's probably going to be a $1 to $1.2 million project. But it is an important facility, and it's going to help us be more efficient in our operations with everything else that we do. So we'll come back to council. We've updated council on this as times progress throughout the year. After doing a analysis of the available land, I think we decided to move it along Only Street, and that actually it works to solve a number of problems that we've had out there. And it also works to free up space if we need it for additional sewer treatment facilities, or, you know, sometimes you need redundancies or expansion capacity out there. So I think it's all working in the right direction, and that'll be a better project for it. I'm trying to get some sort of funding grants for that. These are the hardest projects to get grants for, but I'm working on that as we speak. And if we can't get grant funding for it, I can tell you right now, we can already fund it through the current level of interfund transfer that we do to support the Public Works Facilities Fund. If we just maintain that same level of transfer in from all the funds to support that, we could pay for a new building, but I'd really like to get some of that paid for. So we're going to work in that direction. I'll tell you, it's almost one of the more critical pieces of infrastructure that we need, because it's just really difficult to address all of the various needs that we have and try to maintain equipment that's very costly. We've had those conversations, but I think for me, it's almost my number one project. Not that I would prioritize it over water and sewer, but I think concurrently it's up there. And then we talked about a dog park, and we talked about a wheelchair swing. We talked about our tiny village, and council gave us direction. And here, I just revisited this slide from last year, because almost everything that we planned through that planning session at our retreat last year, we either have completed or we've funded and initiated, and we're just waiting for the completion of those projects. So I'm excited about it. I look at these slides, and I just think where we are is remarkable. So just kind of to sum it up high level, our financials are strong. Our city policies have allowed us to address the needs and the events as they occur. Thank you for allowing us to make those changes because, without them, it would have been more difficult for us to be able to do that. The city's positioned itself to get additional assistance through ARP funds, grants, and low interest loans. I will tell you that I am on grant watch constantly. If you hear of a grant, it doesn't hurt me to have a redundant email if I already know about it. So send it my way. But it's going to be difficult for us to write enough grant applications to meet all of the grants that are available right now. So we're working on that. We have an improvement plan. We have a vision plan. We've got a good development code. Now our financial policies are in place and they really are making a difference. We've been able to respond to COVID-19 and in all areas, I think we've been effective. I think, we haven't over responded to the pandemic. I think what we've done is responded and changed our response as the pandemic has changed and as the needs in the community has changed. But I think we've done a good measurable response. I think the city has stepped up and helped our business partners, and we've tried to be there to support our community at large. So and we're working together. And so I think the state of the city right now as we speak is better than it's ever been before. Certainly. There we go. I had to put some applause in for myself, but if you all have any comments or you want to just talk about something, again, I look back on this last year and it's everything but impressive. It's impressive.
Well, I say it all the time. I'll say it again. You're a rock star, Ron. Big thanks to all the city staff over the past 2 years and all the craziness. It's been fairly wild, and yet I think as a whole, the city staff and everything we've done, it's been a good response overall. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns?
Well, since you mentioned it, I do want to make sure that I do take time to give staff credit. I will tell you that we have been fortunate with some of the staff. Now, we've had some turnover because, good staff always seek and always are able to get other opportunities that we just can't always provide. But we have been really fortunate the last few years to have Elena and Ryan. Now they both have had promotional opportunities and they're gone, and we've gotten some new staff in. They're working well. We've got another position we're working on filling. And all of our office staff have pivoted, and everybody does everybody's job at one time or another. When we have deadlines or issues, usually multiple people in the office review grant applications. It's not just written by one person, but we're working as a team, as a group. And I think that's what's important. And so when I talk about our accomplishments, believe me, they would not be nearly as successful if it wasn't for the fact that we are all working together and that we have a really, really good staff. And I will also say that in this last year, Public Works and the police department both have had to really step up, not just because of projects, but because of natural disasters and just going out and trying to be there to service the community and the increased response that's been required through COVID. So I give our folks props. I think they've done a fantastic job, and if anybody deserves credit, it's the team we have.
Absolutely. All right, moving on. Mayor and council reports. Anybody got anything? Nothing. It's getting late. Everybody's like, nah, it's tomorrow. I think a couple people know this. Originally, I was going to be leaving next month to Bangladesh. That got canceled. And then I was going to Lebanon in March, and that got canceled. So y'all are stuck with me. Well, you're stuck with me regardless, but you're going to be stuck with me physically being present until April. I will find out on or around February 8th if that's going to be changing at all. But as of right now, I will be home until April. And where am I going in April? Going to Tajikistan in April. That'll be fun. That's all I've got. Correspondence, I think everybody's got it in their packet. We did get a letter from the Aumsville Historical Society, just thanking us for the donation from the Corn Festival money. Obviously, they earned that money. They came out and helped and everything too. So, yeah, we always love helping them out, having them come in and talk to us about their goings-ons and whatnot. But yeah, if nobody's got anything else.
Well, I just have one thing. So I would suggest that, we go ahead and cancel tomorrow night's meeting if council's okay with that. And I can do that. There's just a few projects I want to bring in front of council for this year. We're going to be real busy with the water sewer projects this year, but I do have a couple of community projects, and I can do that at the next regular council meeting in a short period of time.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think we're all on board with canceling tomorrow since it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I have 9:40.